What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a look at Beyond Galaxyland, a retro-futuristic adventure RPG. But before we dive into all that, I do need to inform you that this is in fact sponsored by United Label, and if you wind up liking what you see in this video, you can learn more about this game via a link in the description below, as well as a pinned comment. With that in mind, this game is releasing on September 24th and should thus be out now on basically everything: Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, Xbox X and S, PS4, PS5, PC, etc. So with that out of the way, let's dive into this thing. As I mentioned, this is a retro-futuristic adventure RPG, very similar to JRPGs, of course, kind of in that sphere. And in particular, this one was inspired by a lot of classic sci-fi movies, so you'll see a lot of that kind of thing in here. Now that means we're going to be taking our merry band of misfits upon a worlds-spanning adventure as they get to a bottom of a bizarre mystery that saw Earth seemingly destroyed. So let's get a little more specific. Now, the story setup for this game is, as I mentioned, that Earth seems to be very suddenly destroyed as we take control of character Doug, returning home from a nice night out. And as he steps inside to retrieve his pet guinea pig to show off to his friend, he comes back outside to find her missing. And as you go searching for her, you're met with an individual who seems to be suffering some sort of malady before ultimately attacking you and forcing you to run. As you do this, you stumble into a portal that suddenly transports you into a place where you are being restrained, only to be greeted by robots who explain what has happened. Earth has been attacked by some sort of disease-like infection called the End, which spells all but certain doom for Earth, naturally. But in order to save some of your species, Galactic Corporation Dream Corps has transported you and many other humans to a place called Galaxyland. And they've set up a planet just for you and your fellow humans to get things running again, so to speak. But as you dig into that a little bit and honestly just ask some pretty normal questions like, why would this galactic company do this? What purpose does it serve? You then, once you get to the planet that you now call home for at least the time being, Eros, you make a few other discoveries, such as the fact that humans apparently aren't allowed to interact with technology here much, and people seem to have some reservations about this company controlling everything, which is certainly going to pose a problem for our character Doug, who simply wants to get back to Earth and see it with his own eyes. And that's where things naturally spin into the grander narrative about uncovering what's really going on here as you explore a bunch of planets that Galaxyland comprises and get to the bottom of both what Dream Corps is up to, but also what the End is. And along the way, you're going to be joined by your guinea pig, who has, upon arrival to Galaxyland, been transformed into a talking, walking, sentient creature, and one of those robots that greeted you, Martybot. And it's my understanding some others will accompany you along the way as well. And all of that gives the story of this one a somewhat sinister vibe in the background, despite everything seeming somewhat cheery on the surface. But really, that's only a portion of what Galaxyland is all about, because there are a few other things worth talking about. For starters, the turn-based battles. Now this comprises the characters you control, of course, but also the creatures you capture as you fight them. So it is possible, while exploring, to start taking pictures of everything you see, basically cataloging them into a photo album, which gives you statistics and whatnot that you can then see in combat, such as the enemy's health bar. But your main character, Doug, also gets access to a capture ability, where you can summon these creatures following their capture, and they serve as your sort of elemental magic. Every creature you capture has an element associated with them and will deal less or more damage to enemy types related to what those elements are when you summon them into combat, as you can equip them to your characters to use them as summons, where they will perform those attacks as they level up with you, which adds a pretty big bit of customization to combat in and of itself, because you can capture all these creatures and then assign several to each individual character, which can then determine a lot of their summonable abilities, in addition to their regular abilities they get simply as they level up. Now, as you complete turn-based battles and win them, you earn XP, of course, and this will cause your characters to level up, which increases their stats, which are things like your summoning points, health, strength, and intelligence. Now, strength governs the damage they deal with their actual weapons, whereas intelligence increases your summoning ability. Now, that's important to know because they've implemented a bit of quality of life here where before the turn-based battles actually start, you can initiate that combat by attacking enemies in the 2.5D exploration, and this will both damage that enemy as those fights begin, but also it becomes possible to start killing lower level enemies with a single blow doing this, which will give you access to their materials and everything simply by quickly dispatching them, which is important because there's crafting in this game, so you can, in addition to selling these stuff for supplies, also just use those easily accessed materials to craft up things like gear for your characters. But let's talk a little more specifically about the battles themselves, because another thing interesting to me is the ability points system. Your entire party has a shared ability points pool. As you successfully hit enemies, you will raise your ability points for your entire team, giving them access to their powerful abilities to cast, but as you miss and take damage, these ability points are diminished. And you'll want to get around that by successfully defending. Group-wide attacks cannot be defended against, but hitting defense right as your character is about to get hit will save you from some of this in addition to taking reduced damage. But to make that a little more snappy, they've also implemented turn points. Every time your character's turn rolls around, they're given a set amount of turn points. That's the number of times they can attack an enemy each turn. And you can play around with that a little bit by equipping things that give your characters more turns, or only using a set number of those attacks to conserve the rest, which are automatically converted into ability points at the end of that character's turn, say to set up a powerful, timely ability from a secondary character. And when you put all of that together, I think you have a pretty solid little turn-based system for an indie title like this. But let's talk a little bit about exploring as well. So exploration plays a decent bit into this game, despite its 2.5D nature, but in many ways it can play a bit like a side-scroller to be sure. However, you have access to the ability to move between certain layers at certain points of each individual map, and that plays into your movement quite a bit, especially when they start introducing little bits of platforming here and there. And then a little bit later into the title, you can also start switching in between your party members to, say, perform certain attacks, like say a ranged attack to lower a bridge, as opposed to a melee attack to break through a barrier or something. And then later on, they even start introducing puzzles based around moving objects and things around these spaces to power things up and bits like that. So while it is a 2.5D game, they have certainly tried to make the most of it, and that's to not even mention the interesting environments you'll find yourself traversing, especially when you get access to the other worlds in Galaxyland. I was curious how this would run on the Steam Deck, and happy to report it runs very well there, as you might imagine these type of games typically do. Though keep in mind, while it does have controller support, it does not have cloud support. So if you plan on using that device, you might want to play it entirely on that particular bit of hardware, but otherwise, it's a pretty good experience. But that, I think, is all of the important information to know about Beyond Galaxyland, so I certainly hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, do remember there's a link where you can learn more about this title down in the description below, as well as a pinned comment. The game should be out now on basically everything. Though, do remember to let me know what you think about this one down in the comment section below, which naturally means to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.